This episode of the Ryen Russillo podcast is brought to you by AT&T. I want to talk about guarantees and the lack of when it comes to windows in the sports world. I love what the Cavs did this year. They know their windows right now, and there's no guarantee that extends beyond this year. We think it could, but many teams have done so in the past. History tells us your window is shorter than you think. There are no guarantees. And then there's the AT&T guarantee. It means connectivity you can depend on, deals you want, and service you deserve, or AT&T will make it right. Visit att.com/guarantee to learn more. AT&T, connecting changes everything. Terms and conditions apply. Visit att.com/guarantee for details. I know there's been some concern, some news that we were going to become a Ty Jerome only podcast. Spotify has not agreed to that. So we will just be the Ryen Russillo podcast and we'll do it the normal way until I can make that change. We'd like to make it more about Ty Jerome. But today we are going to talk NFL Combine and Matthew Stafford with Albert Breer. So a lot of good stuff. Some awesome nuggets from him as he's in Indianapolis. And how about the Golden State Warriors, the new look Warriors, Jimmy Butler? Everybody is happy with the new Jimmy Butler, and he's happy there too. Anthony Slater, who's covered the Warriors, but also covers the NBA nationally from The Athletic, is going to jump on. We'll talk some Thunder. We'll talk some Minnesota playoff matchups, maybe a little MVP with SGA and Jokic. And we got it extended, just dudes hanging out. Prologue to 45 minutes of life advice. Enjoy. He is a national NFL football writer. That means he's a big deal. SI.com. It is Albert Breer, who is in Indianapolis getting ready for another combine, his 20th, I believe, that he said. So good to see you, man. What's up?
It's actually 18. I didn't go the first couple of years because I was still at the Metro West Daily News and it wasn't in our budget. But so this is 18 of them for me.
Okay. I thought it was your 20th draft.
My 20th, yeah, the 20th draft I've covered. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I knew I had one of the numbers. Let's start, though, before we get to any of the draft stuff, because I just love talking about it. The Stafford situation. There's a timeline here that you lay out that makes it a lot more interesting, that kind of goes back to like the first contractual Band-Aid that even puts us in this situation. Because part of me thought, like, does this just mean the Rams want to move on timeline-wise? He's 37. If you get a first for him, then you don't have to pay him. Like, okay, maybe that's a nice little reset for a franchise that has done a really good job here in the Stafford years. Not only the Super Bowl, I think this past year was an incredible playoff run. There should be demand for him, but I think you do a better job, and I want you to do it here, of kind of explaining the reason we're here appears to be just a disconnect, because I don't think Stafford actually wants to leave LA.
No, he loves Southern California. I think the relationship with Sean is still on solid ground. This is about the contract, and I think a dispute over his value. They negotiated for 6 months last year, and I think I did a good job of keeping a lid on it, but like it was a tough negotiation that came down to the wire. And is he going to report to camp or not? And really, if you look at like structurally what they did, like it's a $5 million raise for 2024. However, that money was borrowed from 25 and 26. So $4 million from 25, $1 million from 26. And anytime a player does that, it's sort of with the understanding on both sides, he's not going to play for the lower number, because if he plays for the lower number, that means he got no raise at all. So like, I think everybody knew they were going to have to revisit it. It doesn't seem logical that the Rams would move on from Stafford based on what he is, who he's been, his relationship with McVay, his fit there, how much he loves it there. They were, in the red zone to beat the Eagles, came as close to beating the Eagles in the playoffs and did it in a snowstorm as anybody. But there's that issue of the contract. And Ryan, the crazy thing is, like, this whole thing about him having permission to speak with other teams, he had that permission for almost 3 weeks now. And so the fact that like he's been able to go out and ascertain his value, and it's sort of cemented his belief that he belongs, in that group of 9 quarterbacks that are making $50 million a year or more. And they still haven't been able to, find a middle ground here, I think is at least a red flag and a sign that things could, that he could wind up being traded. So I think this is a critical week, critical few days that they're heading into here at the Combine. The Rams people aren't here, but they're going to negotiate with Jimmy Sexton over the next few days. It's a very unpredictable situation right now, again, because he does like it there. He does want to play there, but the timelines of the two sides don't really match up. You got a win now player with a team that's now looking at things and saying, we got a chance to be good for a few years, and maybe we don't want to go year to year with our quarterback at that rate anymore.
Whenever a team says, go ahead and look for your value, go somewhere else and look for it. I mean, it tells you.
It's like when you take
things.
A break with a girl, right? Like, it's like, what do you think's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, let's go see other people. Like, how do you think that's going to turn out?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, I think it'd be a little bit easier. I don't know what would upset me more. Like, who did you spend time with? Or, wow, nobody actually does want to pay me what I think I'm worth. I think the second one would actually bother me more. So, there are teams though that are willing to meet his price. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that,
and now what do you do? You know what I mean? Like that, like sort of like, okay, let's see what you're worth. And then you come back and it's like, oh, you are worth like something in the neighborhood of what you were asking for. And I do think that makes it a little bit more difficult. And, it's like the timelines of the sides, like, it's like, okay, well, if we're going to pay you 50, are you willing to say you're going to play for the next 2 years or the next 3 years? So we're pouring that money into something that's going to be here for a few years. If a team is willing to go to 50, what are they willing to attach draft pick wise? Because a lot of times that can be a sliding scale too, Like if you're willing to pay 50, well, maybe you're less willing to give up the higher draft pick compensation. So there's like a lot of moving pieces here, and it's complex. And, I think really sort of boils down to, again, like Stafford getting what he thinks he's worth. And look, like the deal he signed, if we're just talking about the APY, the deal he signed 3 years ago is now 50% behind the market. He's at 40 and Dak is at 60. So you can certainly see why he would want a market correction.
Who do you think's the most aggressive?
I like the Giants in this one. I think the Giants are closer than people think. And I say that as somebody who's got PTSD from like having marked them as like my surprise team last year. And, that didn't work out real well for me. But, I think if you look at it, right, like on paper, you say, okay, Andrew Thomas coming back at left tackle will make the offensive line completely different. You've got real players in your defensive front, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau. You got a number one receiver in Malik Neighbors, and maybe Cooper Kupp comes with Matthew Stafford. Tracy looks like he's a good young back. And then you have the number 3 pick, which, I don't know, is that Travis Hunter? So yeah, you can sort of look at it and say, okay, like they could get to a competitive level fast. Daboll puts a lot on his quarterback, likes to put a lot on his quarterback mentally. Stafford clearly can handle that. And there are jobs on the line. You know what I mean? Like, it's go time for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, So I think the one if here is like if they're not willing to give up this year's first round pick, if it's next year's first round pick, or if it's their 2, which I think is 34th overall, and something else, are the Rams willing to do that? Like, it's a little complicated, but I think they're the most likely one. And then another one that makes sense, we'll see how aggressive they are, is the Steelers, where that's another one where you look at timelines, and I'm saying how the Rams timeline may not quite marry up completely with Stafford's. The Steelers have TJ Watt at going to be 31 years old. They got Minkah Fitzpatrick going to be 29 years old. They've got an offensive line that's coming together. They've got George Pickens, nearing the end of his rookie contract. Like, the Steelers are also sort of in this window where it's like, if they're going to get over the top with, this core of players, now is sort of the time to do it.
Yeah, the pick price for him at 37 years old, as much as I love him, some of this stuff of like who's out there, who's looking to make a court, like I don't think anybody's trading you a first half of the first round pick for Stafford, right?
Right. And I think that's the thing is like the teams that have been involved here, the Giants pick 3rd, the Raiders pick 6th, the Browns pick 2nd. Like, I don't think those picks are getting traded for Matthew Stafford.
That doesn't make no. I mean, just based on the history of the NFL trade, like they're incredible players. It's like, oh, here's a third. And granted, I know it's a little bit different with the quarterback, but at 37, knowing that as soon as you bring him in the building, it's north of $50 million.
Yep.
Like that's what you're saying to the Rams. You're going, okay, maybe we do a second or something like this.
Yeah.
But I interrupted you there a little bit, so I don't know if you had more.
No. I just think it's like, you have to be a little creative with it. And again, like and this is like where ownership comes in too, right? Like with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, like ownership's going to be looking at it and saying like, well, we can't allow something completely reckless because maybe my GM and maybe my head coach are looking to save their jobs, right? So like that one I think is interesting. Again, like I just think there's a reason for the Steelers and the Giants to work with urgency. The Browns make sense too. I just don't know with like that $92 million guarantee that's left for Deshaun Watson. I don't know how you meet Matthew Stafford's financial demands while still having like that anchor, on your books.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so if there's a vacancy with the LA Rams, the quarterback position, Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I think Aaron might be willing to go there for a little less. And so then if you're the Rams, the equation becomes, okay, so we have Matthew Stafford, who's year to year. We're replacing him with another quarterback who's year to year. And are we better off with Stafford at 50? Or what if Rodgers will come here for 20? If Rodgers comes here for 20, now we got the extra $30 million to spend, plus we get the assets that are coming back in a Stafford trade. And that's how you can start to wrap your head around the whole thing. You know what I mean? Now, it doesn't solve the question of who's going to be the quarterback beyond this year, but if Stafford isn't going to agree to do that for you, well, you're in that position either way, So Rodgers is an interesting answer. I think Sean McVay likes Jimmy Garoppolo more than people realize. And could he go in and win with Garoppolo as sort of, I use this example with Sam Darnold and potentially going to the Raiders. Could he be like Alex Smith in Kansas City? You know what I mean? Like where Alex Smith was a really, really high-end bridge with a great offensive coach that got them to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years and bought them time to find Patrick Mahomes. Like I think what some of these quarterbacks that we're talking about, like that's the upside with them. And, Sean's got like obviously supreme confidence in his ability to coach a quarterback up. And I do know that he thinks Jimmy's got something left in the tank and can be a starter in the league.
Okay. What's up with Kirk Cousins?
Yeah. This is complicated, of course, by, again, the guaranteed money left. He's $27.5 million fully guaranteed. He's getting that money one way or the other. If he is on the roster through the beginning of the league year, $10 million for next year, for 2026, becomes fully guaranteed. So the Falcons are looking at this and saying, okay, so you have either we're 1 year at a $90 million number minus the offset, which he would do what Russell Wilson did, is go get the minimum somewhere. So 1 year at $90 million, or do we keep him as our backup? And then we're talking about a 2-year, $100 million commitment. And how does that affect your young quarterback? Ultimately, I think they're going to spend the next few weeks trying to find creative ways to trade him. In the end, I don't know that you can keep Kirk Cousins on your roster. And I think Kirk at some point will probably make his feelings known on that. And then I think Kirk becomes like if he is cut, he can become the solution to the Deshaun Watson problem in Cleveland. Because if you're getting him for the minimum, he's got the relationship with Kevin Stefanski from having, worked together with him, and Kevin having been his play caller with the Vikings. Like that is a way to work around the Deshaun Watson situation, where it's like, we've got all this money, we still owe Deshaun Watson, but Kirk Cousins comes in here on the minimum. We probably draft one somewhere in the first couple of rounds behind him. And now we feel a lot better about our quarterback situation. And maybe we can go to Myles Garrett with that and say, look, like we've fixed this to the greatest degree we possibly can.
Is anyone going to do like a Kirk Cousins deep dive on the contracts? Because I mean, I know everybody makes the Chase Daniel jokes, but Kirk, it's going to be, because I'm glad you pointed that out, because when it was first reported and you looked at the 4-year 180 with Kirk in Atlanta, you're like, okay, well, where's the guaranteed money? What is in the first couple of years? And it's like, okay, this feels more like a 2-year, $100 million deal, which is in line with kind of the salary structure that we've talked about already and what Stafford was looking for. But the fact that the Penix pick looks like it's going to work, Cousins looks so diminished physically at the end of it. Do you want to keep him around to say, hey, we got him for $100 million when he's not going to be sweet about it, which is totally fine. Like, I understand.
Yeah.
And then that extra, so it's basically going to be $90 million for the 1 year. So it'll be $90 million for that 1 year on top of like when Minnesota kept having to guarantee the future years. Remember, he was like the first guy because he was like the first real free agent because Washington decides we just don't want to pay you. And so he gets like a guarantee structure that is so different from the other quarterbacks because the other quarterbacks weren't necessarily like reaching true free agency. Right. And then to deal with the cap stuff, like this is like the third or fourth time with him where he's cleaning up.
You have to give Kirk credit though. Like, cause he had the balls to play on 2 consecutive franchise tags. And that's the difference is most guys will see the big second contract, even if it's a little below market value, and say, I got to take the bird in the hand. There are very few guys that'll actually play out franchise tags the way that he did. And that's how he got to free agency. And now you can't tag him, anymore logistically because of the way that the rules set up. And so he just has to play his contracts out and then he makes it to the market, which starting quarterbacks never make it to the market. So like he did a good job of taking a calculated gamble and has cashed in on it. And even like this situation, like I don't know, like the idea that like he could go now sort of pick his team, you know what I mean? If they cut him and say, okay, like that's sunk cost, 1 year, $90 million. We need to, be all the way behind Michael Penix. Then he's going to go to the market and like he's got an edge on every other quarterback out there because money's no object because the Falcons are paying for it. You know what I mean? Like, so he would go out there and be able to pick whatever the best football situation is for him. It's a good example, I think, for other players, how to use your leverage. It's also like, it's like not realistic for some guys at other positions to do it that way. Like give Saquon credit. Saquon, played through a franchise tag and that's how he makes it to the market, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to actually like look at life-changing money on the table and pass it up and say, I'll wait a year or two until they actually let me go to the market. And it's paid off for him his entire career now.
With the cap going up and then that being reflected in how much of the cap is going to the quarterback. But you're right, the 2 tag years with Washington, and then it's $150 million basically. It could be off $1 here with Minnesota over those years. And I think every dollar was guaranteed because of the 3-year structure and then the 2-year extension, and then they had to stay on it. And then it's going to be not. So he'll have made $90 million in 1 year with Atlanta when he made $150 with Minnesota.
Here's the crazy thing. So if you go back, because those franchise
I'm looking at it again right now.
Those franchise tags are fully guaranteed, right? So his first franchise tag was 2016. So for the last 9 seasons, every dollar he's made has been fully guaranteed before the season.
Good for him. Seriously. Like I still think more of these guys could have more of the contracts guaranteed. And I know they always argue, oh, well, it's actually not guaranteed in the NBA. And I'm like, okay, got it. Let's talk. Is there anything here on Pittsburgh? Do we need to do anything?
Yeah. So I think Pittsburgh, my guess is the Russell thing is over. Where's he going? And I don't know. That's the thing is like, I could see the Raiders signing Sam Darnold again. It's like sort of their Alex Smith in Kansas City. And I think he's a good fit for Chip's offense and everything else. If that doesn't happen, could Russell wind up with Pete for a year or two? Maybe. I just don't think you're not going to bring Russell Wilson in and have him in a situation where he's a backup. You know what I mean? Like, so it has to be like a team that's willing to give him a starting job. And I don't know that team's out there, And I mean, things were not perfect between him and other people in the Steelers building over the course of the year. And
No way.
so,
That
yeah,
shocks me.
yeah, but then you see it at the end. The crazy thing is, though, Ryan, you see like the Jerry Dulac story that came out during Super Bowl week, like about like it was like the stuff that Russell's camp was upset about. It was like, so that stuff was getting out there. I'm like, what are you doing? Like everyone thinks everyone thinks that you're like this operator behind the scenes, and now you're doing it again. Other teams are going to look at this and like say like, no, I'm not signing up for that. I don't want to be the next team that happens to. You know what I mean? So, like I think he's probably gone. And then I would say they want to keep working with Justin Fields. They really like Justin Fields. He is a really good fit for Mike Tomlin's program. I don't think they're going to be willing to just hand him the starting job. And maybe he would have to come as a backup if they get a higher end guy. But I think Fields made a good enough impression there where I would term it as they want to keep working with him. And, I think they've got bigger swings. Like, do they take a swing at Rodgers? They've already, kind of kicked tires on Stafford. I think they're going to look at the higher end options, but I certainly could see Fields being part of the equation in some form or fashion if he can't find a starting job somewhere else.
Okay, let's talk draft. I like what you did. You had our guys McShay and then Daniel Jeremiah just kind of going back and forth and talking about this draft, talking about its strengths, the depth at D-line, the depth at D-tackle, the tight end class that I absolutely love. But if we start at the top, and I know you're there this week and you'll probably feel better about the information 2 weeks from now, but is there a momentum thing? Is there something that's happening at the top where it feels like teams that you talk to, the consensus is going towards a certain direction, a player or some kind of trade?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things. Like number one, the more people I talk to, the more. So, like, I think Abdul Carter is sort of like considered the best prospect in the draft, and it's not that he's a better football player than Travis Hunter. It's just easier to translate him to the pros. You know what he's going to be. And part of that is, as you and I talked about a little earlier, the Micah thing, like that there's a blueprint for it. So I think like the momentum right now, I would say, is Abdul Carter as a very real shot, may even be the leader in the clubhouse to go first overall. After that, the one thing that's sort of kind of, I would say like this consensus is sort of started to form. That like when you're talking about upside and DJ used the term chasing ceiling. If you're an AFC team, you have to chase ceiling. If you're going, if you're having to climb up that mountain that Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are on, like you need to find somebody who's got a high enough ceiling to get to those guys. And Cam Ward, I think, is the one quarterback in this year's class who has it. And so, like, I think that's what separates him from the group. The Shedeur thing is interesting. I think that there's a really strong consensus that Shedeur is kind of ordinary physically. He's smart. He's tough. He's rugged. He's got a chance to play in the league for a long time. But the more people I talk to, the more I hear he's limited physically. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't have a great arm. And so I think that's the battle that Shedeur is going to have to fight with teams over the next 2 months, is showing him that he's a little better physically than they think. And part of it too, like, Ryan, I know how much college you watch. Like, he's running for his life a lot at Colorado, right? Is he going to be able to get away from people the same way in the pros? I know a lot of people don't think he's going to be able to get away from people the same way he did in college.
Yeah, I look at all his creativity and his bailing on the pocket and the fact that they couldn't run the football for 2 years as positives, because I felt like he, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, oh, you're not just going to be able to shuffle and avoid all this stuff and then reset yourself outside of the pocket the way he did. But like, that showed me just incredible instincts where he knew that they had serious limitations. I mean, the offensive line was obviously better in the second year than it was the first year. First year was a total disaster, but they still couldn't run the football. So, if I'm in the war room and I'm arguing the pros and cons, I'm like, this guy, he had a lot of really good receivers and everything, and, fine, but he just kind of, I mean, I hate to just use the cliche term of baller, but like he's a baller.
Figures it out.
Quarterback.
Figures it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it, it's very clear that Cam has surpassed him. I also think there's people that kind of long-term consistently had been like, hey, you know what? Teams do not think like Sanders is even a first rounder. Again, there's like almost no such thing as the second round quarterback.
Well, I mean, you look at the numbers, it's actually true, because it's like, if you think a guy's going to be your long-term starter, you're spending a first round pick on him.
Right.
If he's not, you're probably not spending a 2 or even a 3 on him,
Yeah. So I don't know that it's me arguing for Sanders. It's just, I think that's a positive. If there's one thing, if somebody say, hey, what do you think it should, which you're asking me now, is that over the course of those 2 years, that team was screwed on so many dropbacks, and he found a way to turn a lot of negatives into positives. And I think that means something.
Yeah.
But it was also one of the things that I liked the most about Caleb Williams in the second, because his first SC year, you're like, this guy's a baller. And then it's like, it's dipping off a little bit. But maybe I'm making the same. If you don't think Caleb is going to be good, maybe you think both of those approaches are mistakes. But I'd rather see you fight through adversity as a top draft prospect, as opposed to some of these dudes that drop back. They've got 5 all SEC offensive linemen. Yeah. There's first rounders running around all over the place. And next thing you know, Mac Jones is going 15th.
Right. Which is like the whole, like, how often did you have to go to number 3 in your progression? Right? Like, how often? Because
one wins every time, so it doesn't matter. And it's clean.
Right. I mean, that was the Justin Fields thing. It's like Justin Fields, it was like everybody felt like he's smart enough to do it, right? He's a really smart kid, and like the testing showed like he's a fast processor, but he never really had to do it at Ohio State because he had Chris Olave and Jamison Williams and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson. And so, I mean, it's, Mac Jones, same thing. It's like, how often did you have to go deep into your reads? How often did you really have to move in the pocket? So like, I think Shadour's like, like you said, like sort of the reverse of that, where he had to be the best player on the field pretty consistently. I think that's like Drake May last year. Like Drake May for that North Carolina team, he'd tell you now, like his 3rd year at North Carolina, redshirt sophomore, like he learned a lot because he had to carry the team, and that's experience that's applicable to what you have to do sometimes in the NFL. So yeah, like I think that definitely applies. I also would say this about the quarterbacks, Ryan. I think for some teams, the gap between Cam and Shedeur might be similar to the gap between Shedeur and Jackson Dart. Like I think Jackson Dart might be a little closer for some teams to Shedeur than people realize.
So that would make him a first rounder, Jackson.
Or those teams view Shedeur as a second rounder, and Jackson's right there with him.
So if I gave you the over-under.
But second rounders don't exist, so.
Yeah, I mean, look, a quarterback will go, but I think if a team's sitting there and they like a guy enough, and even if they have him 50th in their player rankings in a second-round graded quarterback, and then it's a need, we know what happens in this draft. It's so much more of a need-based draft than the NBA ever has been. And,
I mean, I think once you get past Carter and Hunter, it almost immediately becomes a need-based draft, which is really rare that it happened that high. You know what I mean?
So that's kind of the message. Is that the messaging that you're getting, not just from McShay and DJ and your thing, is that teams around the league are going, this is a starters draft, not a star draft.
Yeah. It's like, so there might be teams that look at it and say, we have a similar grade on Mason Graham, Will Campbell, Ashton Genty, Jalen Walker. So, like, let's just take what we perceive as the most important position or our biggest need. I think like once you get past the 2 at the top, and DJ thinks Genty's right there with those 2, by the way, which I thought was interesting. It's the first person I've heard say that. But
with Hunter and Abdul, right?
Yeah. It's just he's a running back, so how high do you take him? But I mean, coming out of a year where Barkley, Jacobs, and Henry sort of changed the dynamic at the position for 3 of the best teams in the league, maybe you do look at Ashton Genty a little differently than you would have a year or 2 ago, Anyway, so I think like that the consensus would be Carter and Hunter up here. And then after that, you've got a clump of players, and and need could wind up dictating who goes 4, 5, 6, 7, which again is like, I think an earlier point of the draft than it usually happens.
That's really interesting because I actually hate that stuff. I hate when it's like, hey, look at who the Final Four teams were in the NFL playoffs. So let's draft a running back because these teams just did it. Maybe running backs are having a moment. Maybe this is the time in history where people go back towards it. Maybe it's a countering to some of the defensive stuff that we saw at the beginning of the year, right? Like
it is a really good draft class at the position though. Like, because you have Hampton, who I don't think is that far off from Genty. And then you have the two Ohio State guys, Judkins and Henderson. And I think Henderson's really going to be helped. This is one thing that like a bunch of teams have told me, like Jahmyr Gibbs' success in Detroit is really going to help TreVeyon Henderson because that's going to be the vision for him. But Judkins is a good player. Caleb Johnson from Iowa. And then you have good backs after that too.
What about Amari too, right?
Yeah, Hampton. I'm saying Hampton's right after Amari and Hampton right after Genty, and then probably after those two, you got the two Ohio State guys in Iowa.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Maybe I'm all for it because maybe Bert, the running back Zoom call a couple years ago
worked.
Maybe it worked. And people were quick to judge. Maybe the payoff has happened. That didn't happen as quick as everybody needed it to, but maybe we're there.
We're gonna have a 30 on 30, 30 for 30 on the running back Zoom call in 10 years.
I'm telling you, man, we need it. I want the oral history on that thing. Jalen Walker, I'd expect him to be somebody that teams fall in love with more and more.
Yep.
Like I guess I'm surprised that it's Abdul. I mean, who didn't watch Abdul this year going, that guy's a freak, even when he was hurt in the last game he played in. I think maybe it's Georgia's front where you lose track of which guy you're falling in love with. Of the three guys this year. But I felt like he jumped out the most to me. Maybe teams see it differently.
And you have to I think you just have to, with him, wrap your head around the frame. Like, he's not a traditional edge rusher, like where Michael Williams, the other Georgia guy, is looks like he came out of a defensive end lab. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Jalen Walker's more like the Micah Parsons build, which I know, and just to explain to people, I think Micah Parsons almost generated a new genre of player where you're seeing Abdul Carter was used that way at Penn State, like Micah was. And then, you're seeing it with guys at other schools. And Jalen Walker's a good example of somebody you can, move on, have on the line, have off the line. And where maybe the league didn't know what to do with a guy like that when Parsons came out, because it was such a unique way to use a player that can be that good in both off the ball and on the end of the line. Now there's that blueprint out there. And so it's actually I think for Carter and Walker, it's now a positive. It's not okay, what are we going to do with this guy? It's actually seen as a plus for them.
Enjoy the combine, man. And you can also enjoy yourself some more Albert Breer if you check out the MMQB podcast. They go through the quarterback carousel as well. And I'm sure you guys will be all over the latest from Indianapolis. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
The new look Warriors. So let's do some Warriors. Let's do some big NBA stuff too. So it won't all be on Golden State, but he originally covered the Warriors and now covers the NBA as a national writer for The Athletic. It's Anthony Slater. All right. This Butler stuff's been good, man. Whether it's a vibes check with this team, the on-off stuff that I want you to get to with Butler. There's 6 on offense. There's 6 on defense. We get to some of the scheduling part of it, but there seems to be, whatever it is with this Butler acquisition, there's just some juice to this team that seemed to not be there for months after the great start.
Yeah, and I would, I'd credit Mike Dunleavy for seeing it was needed, because honestly, throughout the months-long process, whatever you want to call the Jimmy Butler thing, there was a lot of skepticism, locker room, coaching staff wise, of sure you want to do that? And I would say the Warriors, again, coaches and players have been kind of protective of this core. And I think sometimes the outside perception is it's the front office. They did do the 2 timeline plan. They deserve some criticism for executing that poorly, at least the lottery picks. But I think the last couple of years, they've been a little bit more itching to kind of try to, get this, shake this thing up, even at last deadline. And I just think the way that the Warriors were playing the veterans at the time were don't do anything rash. And I think there was a little bit of that feeling early this season, don't do anything too crazy. And I think it just got to the point as the deadline came closer. It was like, even if a Jimmy Butler acquisition blows up, what are you blowing up? You're blowing up nothing that is going well. And so they, especially for the price tag, and, they sacrificed Wiggins, which, good player, but clearly if you're just trading out Butler for Wiggins, it's a huge upgrade. That, Mike Dunleavy knew that. He played with Butler in Chicago. And then the 2025 protected first, they just didn't really love this draft from like 11 on. So they're like, if we're giving up 11th or beyond in this draft, how big of an asset is that really?
Okay, so was Dunleavy on an island here? I mean, granted, Lakeup has to sign off on this because that's the way ownership works for any sports franchise, and they have to sign off on doing an extension for somebody that I'd be scared to death of giving the extension. But I mean, I guess you're arguing, hey, you're really only giving him one extra year based on the existing player option. But I was reading your stuff and obviously asking around because Butler shoots down the idea that he would even go there. The pursuit is basically directed towards getting the pieces together for a Durant trade until the Durant thing falls through, that I want to spend a couple seconds on here. But is it Dunleavy by himself convincing everyone around him?
I think there's people within his front office that were, kind of on his side on Butler. And again, we could talk like, the numbers people, some of the, I guess lower level, like assistant GMs. And, I think Joe Lacob's grander vision was to swing bigger. And you mentioned the Durant, we can get into that. But like Joe certainly wasn't a no on Butler. It was like, big game hunting. Now, I think perception wise, Kevin Durant would have been the bigger splash. Like, I think this like, oh my gosh, they got him back. They're about to shake up the league. But like they were made aware later in the process than I thought they liked that Kevin wasn't interested. And then once Butler was there, I think he had a consensus front office wise. And then as we filtered down, I would say Steve was a little bit more separated from the process. I think purposefully. I think especially the way he like cares for the guys in his locker room, and he almost was crying at the podium talking about Andrew Wiggins and what Andrew Wiggins meant, personally and to the 2022 title. So I think he was kind of separated. To like, I don't think he gave the green light or didn't give the green light. I think he was just letting it happen. And then I would almost say the same about Steph. He was involved in the process of Dunleavy was keeping him up to date, but I think Steph purposely, just because of the teammate he wants to be, doesn't want to be the one, pulling the ultimate trigger and pulling the levers. He doesn't want to be seen by that. It's almost like, if you're innocent to what went down, then nobody can blame you for, pulling the trigger.
Okay, let's talk basketball. The on-off stuff.
Yeah.
For Curry, I think is the really important number here. What has it meant for this team in the turnaround with these Butler non-Curry minutes? And then ultimately, like, it's just, I don't want to get carried away after a couple of weeks, but I like this team. I watch them a lot. They get off to that great start. And it's like, man, they've got like two lines of basketball players and they're playing such hard defense. You're like, really? Is everybody going to just keep making this many shots? And then it just falls off a cliff. They've got some injury stuff as well. And then I felt like Curry, was taken. Nah, I've already said this too many times, but I haven't talked to you yet. I'm like, you guys are going to bitch about Curry's shooting numbers. Like, look at what he is doing, how he cycles through these possessions. And then it's like, hey, please take the shot again and again and again. Like, I just didn't feel like, I think there's numbers that are inefficient for certain players that don't perfectly reflect their approach to the game. And, Steph is one of those guys. And now it feels, I can't believe how good it's already been. So go any way you want to, because I went in a million different directions on that. Yeah.
Look, as far as Steph struggles, like he often has like a month dip at least. And it was like at that normal time of the year, right? He kind of like, spent a lot of his energy early in the season, got to 12-3. He was like adamant coming into the preseason, like hot start, right? Need the vibes good. And I think maybe he pedaled, off a little bit and then they hit the dip, and sometimes it's hard to regenerate that. Some, late game, I guess misfortune or just, some of the droughts they had. The knee tendonitis that he was dealing with was a thing. Draymond Green suddenly going through a calf thing. They're older in their career. The marathon wears on them more, which is something they learned. As far as, what's changed, look, Jimmy Butler, I think they're like first in the league in made free throws, and it's a 6-game sample, but like they find the last 6-game sample, they were anywhere near the top like 5 in the league in free throws. So they were bottom 4 in attempts, from the line since he got here. So clearly he's doing that better. He's a low turnover guy, which like it's Steve Kerr's got like the heart eye emojis about like the way like Jimmy Butler had a quote the other day about how he just wants shots on goal. And like Steve Kerr was talking about how great a quote that was. And it's just, I mean, it's what they wanted Chris Paul to be, right? I don't know if you remember when they brought him in, like that was, Steve Kerr's idea that he could bring this, he used to call Andre Iguodala a chaperone on the court. And it was just the guy. I don't know. Did you watch any of the Iguodala jersey retirement the other day?
I did not.
Okay. He was just talking about the genius of Iguodala in the dynasty was the craziness of Steph and Clay in the shot selection and just like the ferocity of Draymond. They always just needed an adult to come in at frantic times of the game where Steph and Clay were getting too wild with the shots, maybe Draymond yelling at the refs, and just slow everything down and just control the game. And like, I believe they think Butler is that kind of a supercharged version of that with more of a scoring mentality. So he just does a lot of stuff that they didn't do. They've called them each other, Steph and Jimmy, opposites attract kind of thing. And then the other thing, you mentioned it, like, I don't know that, especially early in the process, they wanted to give him any type of extension, but I think the front office, it would seem now, smartly just bought that final year, gave him that final season really for now, because he has come in with such a motivated, happy to be here mindset. And if you didn't know anything about Jimmy Butler's past, you'd be like, man, this is one of like best teammates in the league and best leaders, just as far as like, if you've just been around him the last 2 weeks, who knows how long that's going to last. But I think they bought that with the extension.
Yeah, right. And sometimes if you're just buying yourself the window, then you don't really care about the cost because, to your point, what were you blowing up? I mean, there was no window. So now you can start thinking like, all right, and this is what I want to ask you now. Although I was reading your piece and I was reading all the Butler quotes this morning and I was just laughing. I was just sitting in my kitchen reading every quote because every quote was perfect. And I'm not talking about like 1 or 2. It was like 5 or 6 Butler quotes in a row. And you're like, he is absolutely nailing this, which I think sometimes is a little scary because you're like, you're so good at saying the right thing, but none of that matters. 27 doesn't matter. 26 doesn't matter. The playoffs in 25 matter. How good are they?
I think that they're dangerous. I believe I've been saying it for about a week now. I think they're the favorites for the 6th seed. If you look at what's going on around them, the Clippers now with Norman Powell's, and Kawhi just missed some games. They're only 1 back of the Clippers. Their schedule, the Warriors' schedule is really easy. Like I'm looking at this road trip I'm about to cover coming up. First of all, they end the homestand tonight against the Hornets. Then it's at Orlando, at Charlotte. They have a Brooklyn game. They have a Sixers game on this road trip. They come back home. I think there's some Portland games mixed in there. Like there's just a lot of likely wins coming up, and that has nothing to do with their ceiling. But if you just really look at how the teams around them are playing and their schedule, to me, I think it's as long as they stay healthy, I think they're very likely to get into the playoff mix without having to get into the plan, which I think is huge for them to get that week off to prep for a series, because they're going to have to win these series where they're going to be on the road and not favored by just like scheming up sharply and figuring out how a way to small ball these teams to death. Because right now, Jimmy Butler's the tallest guy in their starting lineup, which he was laughing about the other day, 6'7". They're going to have some trouble, I think, scoring, and particularly scoring at the rim against good defenses. I don't like them to like go on some deep run into late May or June, but I do think if they get the 6, we can name the type of teams that might be sitting there at 3. Like, sure, I'm giving them probably a 50-50 shot against most of those teams.
So if we ran through it though, they're the 9 right now, but I mean, it's so bottled up between 6 and kind of 11, really. That's only 4 games of separation between the Clippers and the Suns. Would you pick the Warriors against Oklahoma City?
No, I wouldn't pick anyone against Oklahoma City. We can get to that, but no.
We're going to get to it, right?
Yeah.
Would you pick them against Denver?
No, that would be probably the team I think they should want at least at 3 if they get 6.
I would agree. What about Memphis?
Yeah, maybe that's because I've just seen them like kind of, toy with Memphis over the years. The 2022 playoffs come to mind. They went in, they stole game 1. It would be like kind of a fierce series with a lot of like the Taylor Jenkins, Zach Edey, Draymond stuff. And it would be fun. I think we'd all enjoy it. But I have seen Memphis's depth not play as well in a playoff series against the Warriors.
Yeah, I like their depth. I think there's guys on the team that don't get enough credit. And I think, bringing along some of the guys that haven't played, they'll have minutes now with LaRavia being out. But that's asking a lot of like Gigi or Vince Williams to be like, hey, have huge moments for us in a playoff series against a team with dudes with attitudes like Draymond and Butler. And then, whatever you think of Steph. Yeah, I mean, Gigi's played 15 games. Vince has played only 8 games coming back, but they've both been out there. I already kind of know, like, we're probably both saying, yeah, I think I'd pick him against Houston. I'd probably pick him against Memphis. I bet you're not going to pick him against the Lakers.
No, because I think if the Lakers are the 3 seed, that tells you the type of final month that they had, right? Oh, Luka's probably in rhythm and they're motivated and they're playing well and they got up to the 3 and it's starting in LA. But man, I mean, how about that first round series? Because that would also mean the Warriors had a pretty good final month being at 6. Like they would be, it would just be star driven, that the LA Chase Center back-to-backs. And it would I would take the Lakers though, just because of the 2 stars. But I will say this, I've had a few people say, hey, look, it feels like the Warriors are one player away. Jonathan Kuminga is about a week away from returning. I don't know how that integration is going to go. It could be a little clunky, but that is their ceiling. Their ceiling is meshing Kuminga into this really well. And then they might be a little bit, scarier to people.
And Podziemski, has been better again. It feels like, do they get more frustrated with him than anybody right now? Has he replaced Kuminga on the frustration scale?
Oh man. Yeah, probably. Although they have not been frustrated with his final month. His first month of the year was a lot more frustrating than Kuminga's. I think I would say Kuminga gets more frustrated with them than the other way around. But Podziemski, as you know, and again, blame the Warriors organization and Joe Lacob going on Summer League broadcast saying future All-Star, and them, basically it wasn't they didn't protect him in the Lauri marketing talks quite as much as the reporting and the legend of these Lauri marketing talks would say. It wasn't like it was Podziemski or no deal and they were at the 1 yard line and the Warriors pulled back. It just never got close, but they valued him to an extreme level this summer and still value him to an extreme level, to the point he came into camp. He was talking about taking 8 to 10 threes a game. I'm going to replace Klay Thompson shooting. Chris Paul's gone. I'm going to do more playmaking. He thought it was year 2 of a Jalen Brunson type trajectory here. And he got humbled early in the season. And there was bad moments. I remember a game in Denver. He threw a really bad alley-oop and a 2-on-1 that got picked off.
I was there for that one.
Okay.
And that's why watching it in person, it was man, they are when Steve gets upset with him.
Remember Steve was yelling at him on the sideline that game? And honestly, even worse, do you remember you might not even seen it, but Steve comes to the press conference and he's like, we got guys out here trying to get Sports Center top 10 plays. And he was he really went off on Podziemski and then started naming him and saying, I hope he's listening to this. And then Podziemski, who I will say, by the way, broke his nose in the last game of preseason, got sick early in the season. It was just a really weird first month for him. But he missed about 12 games with an ab injury, and he almost got away. He was out of the public consciousness. Nobody was even talking about him for a while. I think it mentally reset him. You look at his numbers since then, he's the rookie version of himself plus some. And I mean, he's now leads the league, a team in plus minus again. He's plus 109 the last 6 games. And it's not just those type of numbers. It's he had 17 and 13 the other day. He's shooting the 3 well, and he's really fitting with Butler. And yeah, right now he's really been their 3rd, 4th best player over the last month at least.
Before I go into the OKC stuff, coming off of last night's collapse, which again is just they beat Minnesota 2 nights ago. They've played them 3 times in 11 games. So I'm not going to look at last night's blown lead and collapse as hey, is there a bigger picture thing here with OKC? I just want to finish up on the Durant stuff. I think I know you have more info than I do, but I remember that day it was yeah, there was a deal in place. Doesn't want to come here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember talking to Steph after the Butler trade when he was just absorbing oh, wow, we actually did it. And, I kind of asked him about the Kevin aspect of it all. And he was so the trade deadline's obviously on a Thursday. If I have the timing right, he had talked to him basically the Saturday-ish range before, somewhere around there. And he was yeah, Kevin doesn't want to go here. I know this. But the front office, as it has been told to me, kind of underestimated that aspect. And within talks, we're kind of being signaled from Phoenix's side that no, it's fine, and then by the end, it was okay, let's make sure here. And then they were given a much like colder view of it from the Durant side of like, oh no, he really doesn't want to be here. And I think they had a lot of 2019 flashbacks going through their mind of like, as good as that 2019 team was, remember how miserable it was, and they just didn't want to replay that. And it was clearly Kevin's wishes not to replay that. So they pulled out of it. But you mentioned it from what I understand, like deal was almost, I mean, it was basically agreed upon except for that last checkpoint. But I think both front offices should have got that checkpoint out of the way a lot earlier, because then I think if you're a Phoenix, you're looking back now like, you may have ruined a relationship where you could have got that answer a lot earlier.
Let's talk Thunder. As I mentioned, up 25 last night. They lose in overtime to Minnesota. Rudy's not playing last night. Randall's been out. DiVincenzo's been out for a really long stretch. But the weirdest part about it is like Ant had a calf thing, and then he came out late in the game, and they didn't even bring him back in until like a minute or so into overtime. They were up 16 under 4. So Oklahoma City's the second team since 2003 to lose a game up 16 or more with 3:45 or less to go. It was a really, it was incredible what was happening with the bench guys, Dillingham, Shannon, Clark, and then they put them with and Jaden McDaniels when Ant was out, so they played small. I think Finch was just really good. He talked about like his trapping against SGA, and they were selling out and trapping him with McDaniels and Alexander Walker. And so there was a defensive adjustment that Finch had talked about, and you could just see it because they were playing zone a lot. They were trapping. And also Oklahoma City, I think, missed every single shot. Okay. Like wide open threes. So like the shots you would want off of that trapping were there, and they didn't make any of them. And you also can see a basketball team in the Thunder being like, we just beat these guys. They don't think they're going to lose this game. I think they turned it off somewhat. And it's just a credit to like what Shannon did last night, 17-10. Clark's a defensive matchup guy where I think Finch got pissed at him on a foul, but then brought him back in, didn't shut him down for the game. Because I think with this, injury situation they have, they can't start limiting minutes of guys that are in the rotation right now. Here's my point. My point is like twofold. Let's start with the Thunder. Windhorst had a really interesting quote just the other day, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that the people around the NBA don't really respect the Thunder, or they're not afraid of them, which when you think about who they are defensively, like this is all-time stuff. The depth is there. They're getting Chet back. You want to talk third scorer that you rely on in a playoff game, I would allow it. I've talked about it before here. Do you think that's players being disrespectful? Because I have a hard time believing coaches watching the film of this not respecting what they see.
I would just say from my conversations with people on, I guess, lower in the West bracket, it is more players that seem to be like they're beatable, and I think it's a complete offensive thing. I don't think nobody I've talked to is like, oh, that defense is fake, they're not going to be, they're going to be easy to score on. Nobody is saying that. To me, it's always been, there's a belief that in the playoff setting, you can scheme up against SGA a little bit. I mean, you kind of laid it out with what Minnesota did last night, but you could just, you take 2 weeks, you're just scouting them. You're just highly focused. All your veterans are highly focused, and you can just focus, you can put all your attention on what's the best defense to bottle up Shea and force Jalen Williams and the rest of the team to score enough. Now, look, Oklahoma City could say, that's fine. Maybe we score 99 in this game, but maybe you score 91. Just with the way they're going to play. And I think the way they can turn you over, it's like they can get a lot of, fast break transition type stuff. So I don't subscribe to the theory that they're as beatable as others seem to be, but I do understand. I covered that Thunder Mavericks second round series last year. Jalen Williams wasn't quite ready. They've tried to, give him more on ball responsibility, pull ups, playmaking responsibility this year to try to get him readier for those type of series. Chet Holmgren, I think, we're going to see how much rust or not he's going to have from this. Was a bad injury to have, a multi-month absence. So I want to see how ready he is. But the reality of that second round series last year, they probably should have won it. Or at least it was close. I mean, it was very much a toss-up series. Josh Giddey's minutes, go look at his minus. I mean, that was such a drag on them that whole series. They've clearly, obviously wiped that out.
And it's such a glaring, by the time the second or, I always love the second or third game of a series where you go, okay, you have decided this guy does not matter. now, and everybody's like in tune. Like you can go in and night to night and go, hey, this is somebody we're going to help off of. This is something we're going to do. But like over the course of a regular season, like a lot of that stuff can get lost. That's why I still think that LA's preparation and execution of what they wanted to do defensively against Denver on Saturday night was so impressive because it was like a very specific, like, this is what we're doing for this matchup. But yeah, like to the Giddey stuff, like some of these games, it becomes alarming who the guys are that are being ignored offensively. And those minutes are just not going to happen now.
Yeah. I want to see the Hartenstein, Holmgren minutes the rest of the season, because I think they believe that like that's their best 5-man group, and that's the one that they're probably going to win with. The two centers out there, you could say Chet's a power forward, but they just haven't had much data or experience with it. But I like what Aaron Wiggins has become. Obviously I thought Caruso looked good last night. They're deeper. I'm not among those that are doubting or believing, hey, they're going to get upset in the second round or whatever. But I do understand that theory's out there. And again, I just think it's a lot of people that think they can defend that team when it comes down to it in a playoff setting.
Would you pick them to win the West right now?
Yes, I would. Confidently too. I don't know where are you at on it? I mean, I would have no issues saying I think they're pretty big favorites.
Yeah, I think that defense is serious. It's just, there's certain nights when I watch those guys defensively, and there's no like issue. There's nothing with that roster with the player personalities where I go, oh, what if this guy has, and I would just think that Jalen Williams is second times through a playoff that he's just going to be a better player, because it happens all the time. It happened with SGA, which I point out all the time in that Houston OKC series when Chris Paul was still on when he came back to the Thunder and they took it to 7, like SGA didn't look super comfortable, and now the guy might win MVP. Speaking of, you have an MVP vote. I have an MVP. Well, we believe we'll have one for this year, so we don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
Where are you on this? Because it is a 2-man race.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Shea above Jokic for basically a few months now, and I would still have that. Yes, Jokic has definitely closed the gap, but I know like the Nuggets getting closer in the standings is relevant for sure. They're probably going to end the season as the 3, maybe the 2 seed, but it's like we need to talk about how big a gap between 1 and 2 it's going to be, how big a gap between 1 and 3, whatever. I don't know. You might have it up right now, but it's at least 8-9 games.
8.5. Yeah.
They're 8 games better than the Nuggets. We can't just look at the seeding here when we talk about, I guess, team success. I do think the team success matters. If Shea does win it, anybody that's arguing for Jokic is going to make the voter fatigue case, which is probably true. I mean, I guess from the human element, like, you want to reward the Thunder and Shea for what they've done. But if you're just cold hard looking at the stats, Jokic might have, a slightly better case just because of counting numbers. The on-offs I know are very similar. I don't know exactly what they're at. Maybe you have those up, but Shea, I think this really matters within this conversation. Like Jokic is a fine defender. I'm not even disparaging him on that end, but Shea is like a very rare high usage guard who's like a sturdy defensive piece of this best defense in the league. And I don't think that should get lost within this. Like he's a really good defender that doesn't get picked on and is not a weakness out there, which is very rare for, his player type. Yeah.
The last time I saw like the net rating stuff, they were like right there with you. So I don't want to mislead the audience here because I haven't looked it up and I don't have my Cleaning the Glass account open on this desktop as I do on my laptop in another room. So I can't log into it really quickly here. I'm surprised a little bit. I mean, look, we all have our different criteria with it, but I think the game standings, I don't know that I would put as much into that. Like it'd be one thing if Denver was a play-in team, maybe, but if you're the 2 seed, I mean, granted, I could probably make hey, Jamal, and then Gordon misses that time. And we already went into the team knowing that the roster wasn't all that good. Although some of the on-off stuff with Jokic was so weighted, one, because he's the best player, but also because of how bad the depth is. Like it looks even more egregious with the on-off stuff for him. So it's a really good statistical argument in his favor, but one that you can kind of look to and go, well, it's even worse because of who they were putting out there in those non-Jokic minutes all the time. That start of fourth where you're like, is the lead 8? When can you bring him back in? and all the times where it felt like they would lose that in the past. Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of it as like a games behind thing because I just feel like Oklahoma City's the better basketball team.
For sure. I think sometimes people just talk seeding more than like if there's that big a gap.
No, it's a good point. Like if you're 6 out, but you're the 6th seed, isn't that actually better?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I would put as much into that. I'm still on the Jokic side of the argument as of right now.
I mean, look, if you were to ask me like who's a better player, like I would probably say Jokic. So maybe I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but I just like the season the Thunder are having. I don't know. I'm like kind of a reward that type of voter maybe. And just like the seriousness with which they've taken the season and I mentioned it, maybe I'm weighting it too much, but like the cog he is within this defense that we're talking about, like, I just don't think that part of it can be ignored. You hear quotes coming out of Oklahoma City about how important it is to them that their best player defends the way he defends and is willing at times to switch on to guys and like, dig in and bend his knees. And like, obviously he's part of that turnover machine that they have there. Like, and I'm not trying to say Jokic is not, a better defender than maybe even his reputation suggests, but I just think what Shea does on both ends matters, not just, his scoring numbers.
Last thing, is there anything, because this Minnesota thing, man, like, it's funny because the defensive numbers, like a week or two into the season, it's like, man, can you believe they're this bad defensively? If you go through it month by month, go last 15, like, their defense is not an issue. They're fine. I do think people attack Rudy now in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen before. I don't think it's the same amount of fear that's there, but they still have all these perimeter dudes you could throw at it. So the defensive thing is not an issue. It's really been about the offense. You could even point to some of the offensive stuff last year. So now they are not healthy. And I don't know, do we feel better about them now than we felt? It's just such an odd team to evaluate because I never want to rule them out because of Ant. But then you think, okay, but if everybody's back, is that the best version of them? Because I'd say it's coming off of last year's momentum. It's been underwhelming.
I think DiVincenzo is a swing player for them. And getting him back and like, him being like that high volume, good percentage 3-point shooter. Like I think he adds a dimension that they're missing right now that can help them at every level of the playoffs. I just like his game and like how he fits there. We were really talking about Randall, right? As far as like, if everybody's healthy, is this the best, fit?
It's about Randall.
Yes.
You're right. I mean, DiVincenzo fits into any situation,
yes.
So that's fine. And anybody can use more and more shooting. And I'm not even like so down on Rudy that I wouldn't want him in matchups, but it's pretty clear that like it's going to be matchup specific for them in the playoffs. Like you could see Rudy getting limited in a way that you wouldn't see certainly during last year's run or some of the prime Rudy defensive years.
Yeah, it's probably one of the tougher coaching jobs the rest of the season. And Chris Finch deciding on lineups down the stretch and even the personalities at play here, right? And like, maybe telling Julius Randle he's a, 20-minute per night guy who's mostly second unit. Okay, benching Gobert, although, look, Gobert took it on the French team, right? I mean, which might even mean more to him, I would imagine. So I think Rudy can probably understand it a little bit, but yeah, it's going to, in game 3 of a series that they feel like they need to win, like Chris Finch is probably going to make a choice that's going to tick off a few people. But I think we all know in sports, like if you just win the game, then it's tougher for guys to complain.
Always good stuff, man. Great catching up with you, and we will talk to you probably sometime around the playoffs.
All right,
Thanks,
sounds good. Yep. Thanks for having me.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. State Farm helps you score an affordable price when you choose to bundle home and auto insurance with the Personal Price Plan. You can choose the insurance coverage that fits your needs at a price you can afford. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can bundle and save with a Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts, and savings and eligibility vary by state.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari, 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Life Advice, the email address, lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. We've got a little room here, room to explore the space. So a couple follow-ups. Ceruti Ceruti had something he wanted to bring to the group's attention.
Well, you called me this morning, and I was getting out of. I had some blood work because you get your annual physical, and then afterwards you go get some blood work done a couple days after. And I had kind of a bad experience. I'm fine. I haven't got the blood work test results back, but I have like a golf ball size like welt on the inside of my elbow. And, I've had some bad ones before where like I just don't think the person doing the blood like really gives a shit. And this was like the all-timer. And like I get in there and this guy's like kind of doesn't really want, they're kind of busy. He doesn't really want to deal with me. So he passes me on to this other woman who I think is also kind of busy. And she's just kind of like mumbling, not rude, but like clearly isn't like super pumped that I got passed on to her. She puts the arm thing on me, like the rubber band thing. It's way too tight, way too tight. She starts slapping my vein. I thought I had pretty good veins. Maybe not.
Not going to a jazz concert tonight. Yeah.
And so time to stick the needle in. She sticks it. I'm not a doctor. Not no.
You just know it's a miss. You just know
she
it's a miss.
She just sticks it in way too far. I knew it. And then she pulled it back out, and the blood starts coming out, and that's always kind of a weird experience. But it like kind of hurt, and I was like, that was kind of strange. So I get home, I take a shower. I get out of the shower, I just have this giant golf ball on the inside of my elbow, and it freaking hurts, man. There just seems to be way too much variance in like who's good at drawing blood or not. Like I've had some good experiences. This is by far the worst, but is there no like baseline for this at all? Like, does nobody take any pride in this? And I'm sure there's gonna be people who be like, hey, suck it up, pussy. It's not that bad. I don't know. It was jarring to me. So here we are. My elbow legitimately hurts.
Yeah, it never goes well. I think 2 years ago, she couldn't find the vein, and to make it like that, we were like, all right, that's a wash, and I couldn't pee in the cup. I just couldn't do it, and I was like, I'm just the worst patient in America. Right? Yeah, I don't know. I tried. I drank so much water. I went back like 3 times, and they're like, all right, I guess you can just leave. And I was like, God, that really hurts.
Wargon dialed up the camera.
Yeah, in the lead,
unprompted.
In the lead up to the marathon, I had pretty bad shin splints. So I go to the doctor, and they're like, all right, we're going to give you some cortisone shots. So she's like, you're going to get 2 shots, like one here, one here. She puts the first one on my leg, immediately pass out.
Whoa, not a needle guy?
Not a needle guy.
Okay.
Did you know that you were not a needle guy?
Yeah, I know.
You have to let people know, because if they got to catch you.
I was laying down, thankfully. Okay. But I wake up, and there's just like a bunch of people in the room, and I was just like, no idea what happened. But good times.
Hey, damn. Quick question for the marathon. Is that a PED?
Sure. Let's say it is. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a steroid, right?
Kinda.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd want to do that down at Disney. Just something to think about. Yeah.
Next time do it clean.
I too just had blood work done, and I had the awesome experience where I was in New Orleans, and I got a phone call that I missed because I miss all my phone calls, and they were like, "You need to call us back immediately." Yeah, and I went, "Great." And then of course you call them back. It was like, "Hey, what's the deal?" She's like, "Well, we can't tell you right now." Great,
sick,
awesome. So this is going to be a fun week, and that's why I went to the World War II Museum, because I was like, I might die soon.
Put things into perspective, like
So I spent, I think, 2.5 days down there without knowing, and then the doctor called and was like, "No, everything's fine." He's like, "What did they say?" I was like, "They made me like," I was like, "Just tell me." She's like, "I can't tell you." And he was like, "I don't know why."
Why can't you tell me?
Yeah, right. He's like, I don't know why. This is the second time this has happened to me, where it was like, "Just tell me now." And she was like, "I can't tell you." And then he gets on. He's like, "No, everything's fine." It's like, I don't know why they left a voicemail like that. And I was like, great. The other one's a much longer story. I don't know if I'll ever share, but it was awful. I got a call from the doctor at 3:55 on a Friday before I had finished the show at ESPN. So I missed the call. I head to the gym, little Friday West Hartford routine. And I call back, and it was like, "You need to call us immediately." And they were closed, and they were closed until Monday morning.
So just you alone with your thoughts for the weekend.
Right. Yeah. Right. And everything worked out. So
and then they say, if it's an emergency, please call 911. You're like, I'm not sure if this is an emergency. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just, for the doctors that listen to the show,
Get a script or something for your people.
Yeah.
Like the
Or
cold
don't
call.
call. The New Orleans one wasn't even close to as bad as the one years ago in Connecticut, because I knew. I was like, great. I called immediately. I was in the car. I was leaving ESPN. And, it's like the office is closed until Monday, 9 a.m. I'm like, just sweet. Like, great. I called like 3 more times just hoping. So I just think there needs to be something at these med schools where you go, hey, when you call somebody about their results, if there's nothing wrong, leave that in the message.
At least a
Yeah.
hint.
Yeah.
Well, that was like when, there's kind of nothing worse than like an unknown medical possible concern and just you and your thoughts. Because that was like me with the bat thing. I was like, I didn't think it was a big deal. And then like
Are
somebody
you good, by the way?
Yeah, I've got all 4 of my rabies shots and, I
Oh,
should be
right.
good for
That's
another-
right. The rabies
another
thing.
2 years. Yeah. But like, I call
You're
a
good,
bunch of
man.
people. I call
Start going to
doctors.
caves
Like,
more often.
yeah, I'm free to go and whatever anybody's addict, whatever you want me to do.
Spelunking.
But
Spelunking.
nobody
I went
like
spelunking.
no
Recently.
doctor, the CDC, no one would just give me an answer of like, should I get this shot or not? Like, no one wants any of the. I mean, I get it, you don't want any of the liability, but it's like, just can somebody just give me any sort of counsel other than like, maybe you could have it, probably not. Like, is there any gray area? Like, give me a lean. Nope, nobody wants any liability. Okay, so I ended up getting 4 shots. Good times.
Well, you're good. I think that's just good. I think it's for the neighborhood.
Wargon, could you do
alone.
4 shots? No way. No way you could do 4 shots.
He would
in a
just
day.
have rabies.
Yeah, there's no way. I'd be asleep.
Just walking around with
Can you guys
rabies.
put me out for these shots? Like some
Thankfully,
people-
I fainted after the first one. She gave me the second one. Good
while
dog.
you're out.
Oh,
While I
wow,
was
that's
out.
a good call.
Yeah.
Nice.
Homie move. Yeah.
2 birds,
Savvy
1
move.
stone.
Where was the
Exactly.
shot? Was it in the arm?
In my leg. No, it was in my leg.
Oh, in the leg. Okay, right
Shin
into
splits.
the shin.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not in the
damn! I
bone,
didn't-
but like in the muscle.
Yeah, no, I
We
hear
know
you.
this. We know this. Even though there's some PED questions, we'll never be able to confirm that he's a steroid user. Unless it's oral.
Does it count if he was unconscious when he got the steroids? I don't think it does.
Right. Against my will, maybe.
That'd be great in front of Congress.
Do the Rafael Palmeiro finger wag at Disney.
I passed out. I'm not here to talk about the shots.
He didn't knowingly take it,
Can we just, I've been thinking about this, by the way, like how unfair the PED outrage was towards baseball. Like the second somebody hit too many home runs, and granted, they were doing it, but that league takes a beating. And then if anybody in any other sport is like outperforming, and nobody even knows, like, how are you going to judge a guard who's outperforming in the NFL? Like, that guy's had way more pancakes this year.
Right.
What's wrong? Nobody even thinks about it in any of the other sports. And now I think we're so just desensitized to all of it. And I think, moving forward, there'll be just kind of these stigmas that are gone, because you'll say like, this might actually be good for you, as you age out or whatever. But I just think there's things that happen in other sports that no one ever says anything about. And yet we just dumped thousands and thousands of hours talking about it, baseball, for like a 2-decade stretch, and then we all just kind of stopped anyway.
And we just
But-
abandoned baseball nationally.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, we're good. We just
left it bloody in a
fucked
parking
you
lot.
up. Yeah.
It's like nobody moved
Our
that
job
body
is
yet.
done here. Yeah.
A lot of strikeouts, very few balls in play. Home runs are down. Thank you.
That's like some
Great
meme of like,
point.
my job is done here, but what
Yeah.
have you done?
All right. No, that's good. It's good, Ceruti. All right. Let's read a couple emails here. We're obviously milking this a little bit just because we know I have the time. Although, Kyle, do you have an out today?
Oh no, I'm good. I'm good after you're done, so I'm good.
The out is the out.
Yeah,
What
ceiling is the
what
roof.
you're saying. Ceiling is the roof.
Is that game?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Ceruti
you
and I
are.
were there.
Break it up every time we talk about this.
Look. So we got another Josh Allen checking in. 29 years old, 5'8", 145, basketball comp, TJ McConnell, with only about 20% of his hustle, maybe 10% of his athleticism in Arizona. As an Arizona grad, I have to shout out my NBA Wildcats. Bear down. Look, love TJ McConnell. I'm currently listening to the Friday pod, the Life Advice segment. Had to do a double take when I heard you start to read the Josh Allen email about being named Josh Allen. I've been thinking about emailing you guys the exact same email. For a split second, I thought I actually wrote that and somehow forgot I sent it in. I figured another Josh Allen brethren shared our experience, but it was quite hilarious to hear it from another Russillo pod listener. I'll share my experience and I'll try to keep it brief. I echo, all caps, everything emailer Josh Allen stated. My experience has been quite exactly the same, which I guess isn't too much of a surprise. I constantly get, nice game you played Sunday, or you won me my fantasy week, man, during the season. I received 5 texts from random family and friends during the AFC Championship game, all saying some version of rooting for you against Mahomes.
That's kind of funny.
These are all positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, your name's not Deshaun Watson or somebody who's not good.
Yeah. I was going to, this might be too far, but remember, I shouldn't even say this.
Mark this.
Never mind.
Come on, let her rip. We have time.
Remember I feel like enough time has passed. Remember the Jerry Sandusky thing?
Yeah.
And there was another Jerry Sandusky who was like in sports media. It's like, man, one of all times to have the
terrible.
Jerry Sandusky name. It's like, that's so it could be way worse, dude.
That was a tough one for that guy.
Blessings.
Strangers I'm introduced with always go with, like the quarterback, or shouldn't you be in Buffalo? When I was in Maui.
I like that one.
Yeah. You like that one? I was going to use it
be
if
in
he meets
Buffalo.
one. Like, I wish I could just meet a Josh Allen one day and use that line. When I was in Maui with my wife on our honeymoon, the hostess of the restaurant hit me with an I thought the reservation was for the Josh Allen. Honestly, it doesn't bother me that much, but it does blow my mind that everyone seems to think they're the first person who has made the joke to me, as if I haven't heard it 100 times before. Okay, see, this is where I would agree with you. And this kind of gets to whenever I see just the same video on X that was posted like 4 days before, and then somebody else, and like some of these accounts, it just feel like unless they've shared the thing that everybody's already seen, and they've really offered nothing to society, and they have all sorts of followers. So I guess it's monetized somehow. So I don't resent the monetization. I resent, I don't even resent the joke that necessarily is. I'm not offended by the joke. I'm offended by that you think you're actually contributing something here. And I think, if anything, it just shows that a lot of people like to just be a part of the conversation. If you say something positive about a woman, and I've done it, a few times.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, right. No, but like if it was a coworker, right? A coworker who's female or a woman, and the guy that goes, I hope she sees this, dude. She's not going to fuck you. And you're like, you saw that 700 other times and you thought it was funny because you're like, oh, you know what some people do is they tweet this when a man says this about a woman. And I'll be like, oh, reading this gave me a stroke. Oh, so it's like the same stuff. Like the first time I saw reading this gave me a stroke, I laughed. I chuckled. I was like, that's pretty funny. And then it's not that anybody's coming up with it. They're just like, man, I'm just part of this whole thing. And that's generally like what I've learned about a lot of people, is that they just kind of want to be a part of something. So this is what you're a victim of, both you and Josh Allen, the other guy that emailed. You're just victim of people that probably aren't that creative and want to feel like they're having their little moment. And they always ignore the fact that this moment has happened to you so many different times. So, there you go. I've yet to come up with a good response besides something lame like, I'm the original Josh Allen, muttered in a slightly disparaging tone. I've also given the blank stare. Yeah, you're right, Kyle. I don't think it does hit. The condescending haha. Yeah, I'm glad to hear at least one other Josh Allen shares this conundrum. I can only wonder how many more are out there. There could be a series. It could be a Netflix thing. They just get in a room. They'll look at each other. And one guy goes, I thought you were supposed to be in Buffalo. One last funny story. I have the username that is basically Josh Allen on a popular social media payments app. I frequently get friend requests from Bills fans for requests for hundreds to thousands of dollars from losing sports gamblers. I'll attach a few. I started you in the playoffs and you let me down. This guy requests $100. John requests $6,000. Save a fan's ass. Congrats on your contract. So happy to have you with us. Let's go Buffalo. What a super fan that guy was. Hey, here, can I get $6,000?
Good season.
Huh.
Yeah,
Probably
I
never
don't think,
gets anything when Josh Allen makes some plays and wins parlays. No one ever sends money, right? They always come looking for it.
Yeah.
That's just society, though. There's nothing he could do about that.
I told you about the friend who the guy picked out his Chevy Silverado, just sent him the link on an Instagram DM asking if he could buy it for him. It was like totally serious. He just mapped it all out. It was like, I know life has been good to you, and I know you'd like to.
Like he
where
had a
would
couple
you
of bullet points as to why.
Would anyone
pitch.
actually ever do that? Like if you just DM Vince Vaughn, be like, I've got it all picked out. It's a Jeep Cherokee, good gas mileage. It's down the street, South Bay Jeep.
Loved you in old school. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe somebody famous would do it to then say they did it to show that everybody.
That is
they did
true.
it.
Look
Yeah.
at how good I am.
I was thinking
Look
for the
at-
Josh Allen guy, what if he was just like, my dad's name's Woody, so it's not that bad or something. Like you could do something else. Like there's a joke that's not like,
not
I'm
bad, Kyle.
right? I just came up with that. Like Woody, because that you don't want to be Woody Allen, right? So maybe that works.
But then
Or
you're
it's cool.
also
Like my dad's Tim. I don't know. There might be something there. Just a
go to
new
the Allen
angle.
Rolodex.
Just explore new stuff.
Did you like Home Improvement as a kid, Kyle?
Yes,
A lot.
did like it a lot. Tim Allen, great voice. And then I learned later about his like early troubles. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Come
few
back
bumps
from
in the
anything.
road.
Did you know that there was a Home Improvement video game?
I just
That
learned
must
that because I follow a bunch of nostalgia accounts. I think it was
Yeah.
it NES or something.
I thought it was at Sega or
It was
Sega
one of
Genesis
those.
maybe. Which all those Sega Genesis
16-bit?
games back in the day were the exact same game, just with different things. Like you all just kind of go in a zigzag upward motion. You throw stuff and you jump over stuff. But it was like there was a Home Improvement video game.
They were just licensing anything back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Outrun. My little brother was like, the car just stays in the middle the whole time.
And the
I
screen
went-
moves or something.
Yeah, and he destroyed the game for me. I was like, he's right.
Damn it.
The way little kids can just see stuff in a way that's not contaminated. And then he's like, no, the car's just staying there. And I'm thinking, oh, no way. He's right.
Yeah, there was like something in the Toys R Us. There was a pretty big commercial run, probably when I was like maybe 8 or 9. And I was like, all I want for Christmas is this robot. It's called Emilio. And it was like pricey. Like everything that was electronics and a little bit cool back then was so expensive compared to like what it is now. And my dad was just like, come on, man, you don't want that. And I was like, Dad, the commercial says he'll do the laundry for us. And like, there's all this, it's like, it was a remote control thing, but it was, I don't know, like the size.
Did you really think the
of a
robot was going to do your laundry?
Dude, I hate to say it, but yeah, I did. And to this day, we got it. And I was just like, halfway through Christmas Day, I was like, this thing's a piece of shit. And he was like, I told you. And he still jokes about it to this day. I've never get over it. He's like, oh, is it going to do your laundry for you? Like when I got my Mustang or whatever, it's like, hey, he'll find a way to like, just like dig. Yeah, Emilio. That was my
the Home Improvement video game. That must have been the worst present ever. That would be the uncle, like a great uncle
who likes
that.
Tim Allen.
Yeah,
It's like, hell yeah.
I don't even know if he liked Tim Allen, but he'd be like, well, they still had those in stock, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, what's the concept of the game, Ceruti? It looks
So
like
I don't know what the overall what the goal is, but there are apparently dinosaurs that shoot lasers. So
Whoa.
I don't know.
I don't remember that episode.
I don't know what that has to do with Home Improvement, but yeah, that's I'm on a Reddit thread about that. So I can't find like a game score. I don't know if they did that back then. It was Super Nintendo, by the way, not Sega.
Okay.
I had Sega. I was one of those kids that I don't know.
What's
My
it
parents
called?
Didn't really know what they were doing. Sega?
Okay.
Did I say it wrong?
No, I got it.
Let's see here. You want to do some normal ones? Let's do it.
20 minutes in, why not? Take a flyer on
Yeah.
a normal one.
Please advise, rude or boss bitch. All right. Hello, I'm representing the portion of your audience known as the wives who listen in the car with their husbands. No gym stats. Just had a baby, though, so congrats to me on the sex.
Nice.
All right.
She sounds cool.
In conversation with my husband tonight, he just informed me that ending an email with, please advise, is considered rude, passive-aggressive, or too direct. Is this true? I went back through my sent emails and would say I use the phrase daily. I often pair it with direct questions and get the answers I need, but now I'm second guessing that I need to ease up a bit. For context, I'm an interior designer who frequently works with construction trades and male-dominated fields. So do I really care if they think I am rude? Not really, but I was shocked when my husband told me this revelation. Let me know what the crew think. As an aside, I actually love listening to your travel pods. I find your ongoing search for the perfect American steak in European countries hysterical. I think it's more about the salad dressing rants, personally. I haven't caught the Henry the Seventh. What do we got? Henry the Eighth pod yet? Well, we haven't done that. We did Henry the Fifth. But she likes to listen to history pods. Please advise. She says, here's the question I would ask. The questions you're asking in the email. Now, personally, I don't think it's like that rude, but do you feel like if you don't say please advise, they're just going to ignore your questions?
Right.
Possibly.
It's worth exploring new words. I think I've said it a couple times, usually only when I'm dealing with ad people. Like I'm not emailing Ceruti and then be like, please advise.
Please advise.
Do you think I could have off next Sunday?
I'd like it if it started.
Please advise.
That's not it, but I've done it with like some ad people. And honestly, you know what? You're maybe right, because I've done it when I'm like pissed off at some ad people. It's not real. Like, it's like, all right,
whoa, we're
going back and forth over this thing that probably shouldn't have been a really conversation in the first place. And it's like the fourth response, and I'll be like, please advise, maybe. But I think, I don't know. It's better than what do you guys think? So I mean, I don't know what it is, but thoughts? I think you could try thoughts. Sure. I think you could try something else. Just see if you like it. It sounds like you just, you're going through the motions and it feels right, but maybe you just got to fix your jump shot.
There are way more aggressive and douchey, I feel like, email phrases. I mean, please advise. It does feel a little bit redundant, obviously, because if you're sending an email in the first place, you're looking likely for something or a solution or something or a question. So, to your point, Ryan, like I do think there are people who like you can send an email to and you don't get the answers that you want. So if you want a specific answer on something, you say, please advise. I think it's just all about the tone, the relationship with the person. Like if you do the whole like per my last email, like that's a dick. That comes off as dickish, right? But I don't think please advise is in that group.
All right, I got some alternatives here. These aren't good. These aren't good at all.
Read them off.
I get your advice on the matter. This is just Google's like Gemini throwing stuff at me.
Oh, well,
I would appreciate your guidance on. I don't hate that, but I don't like it better than please advise. I'm waiting for you to respond. Jesus, that's worse. I don't know. Please let me know your thoughts about. I don't know. Could you provide guidance? Maybe. I don't know. I still think please advise is probably 1A or 1B on the list that I've never liked.
Yeah, I've never liked please advise more. I mean, you've read all of those. Yep. I get her point though. She wants it to be a little direct, right? If there's some of these other ones are like, let me know what you're thinking. Well, let me know what you're thinking. I'm asking you for specifics here. When are the materials going to be ready? Like, when could you have this install done? Like, are you going to be good to go on this stuff? So she doesn't want to be like open-ended. She doesn't want to be too passive with it. But I still think there's probably something a little bit better than please advise. If anything, when I read this email, I started realizing like, I don't know that anybody ever sends me rude emails. Ceruti, did you have a rude email experience at ESPN?
I'm sure. I don't really remember specifically, but I'm not a big email guy to begin with. I just don't really like it. I'd rather use Slack, which is what we use. Yeah, because it's just more direct and it's like texting kind of in a way, and it's a little bit, I don't know. Maybe there are like less boundaries because it's basically just like a version of texting on your phone. It's like instant messenger back in the day, but for work.
I like it.
So when you send me an email, I'm actually probably less likely to respond to it than if you just Slack me. So to my coworkers, I guess if anybody's listening, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Also, my Slack doesn't say I have 15,000 unread emails, so it's usually like one or two Slacks that I have to check out. So I can't tell you how many times I screw up an email account. So many times. I've got now 4, like just through my whole breadth of emailing. I've got my original like Yahoo from back in the day. I've got a Gmail. I've got my Spotify.
Hotmail?
I did have a Hotmail as a backup for something. I don't know if I can even get into that.
Coupons.
Also had another Gmail that I don't want to say the name of, but every single one of them, no matter what I try, it's going to be different. I look up, a couple years have passed, and it's like 15,000 unread emails. I don't know how the fuck it happened. I don't know how
years have passed. Why do you even check them anymore?
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying, like, a couple years. I'm using the email for things.
Using it, okay.
But then I just wake up one day and I see it. I notice it. It's like, God damn it! I let 15,000 emails slip by me again.
See, I have to. That bothers me.
I don't check the promotional, but like when they sneak those little things, when you're like, in order to sign up or to pass in, you have to uncheck the box that says I don't want promotional stuff. sometimes that one gets past me. And, you think about it. I don't know how Enterprise has probably sent me I rented a car once. I probably have 500 emails from them from 2 years ago. So
yeah, I think
that's
probably
an
once a
indictment
week.
on America,
They must think
not
you're
me.
dead. There's people walking around some Enterprise.
Keep firing it though. See if he
Remember that guy?
responds. See, I'm the opposite though, Kyle. I have to mark all mine read unless it's something I'm going to go back to. So if I have 11 emails, it's 11 things that I need to go back and make sure I handle. And then I do once a week. I'll do it on subscribe sweep of things that get into my.
I feel like that doesn't work. I've unsubscribed from the same thing at least 3 times.
There is one company that really has been pissing me off, and I've thought about hitting them up, and I won't mention them, but they I unsubscribe all the time, and it's cool. Do you just not listen to me? That's fun,
right?
People use life advice to subscribe to stuff all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
we shouldn't even
that
say
makes
that
it
out loud.
harder to get your emails read, guys. Just so you know, if you're doing that.
I guess we probably could try to answer a couple of these. All right. Huge potential move with a baby on the way. Did we read this one already? I don't think so. Comp is Wizards Paul Pierce 270, 6'2", 285 bench, 455 squat, 405 deadlift.
Called game though.
Yeah. I love that. Love that game. All right. I try to keep it short. My wife and I live in a small college town outside of a metropolitan area that boasts a Kermit voice prodigy that could become the GOAT.
What?
I've lived here my entire. It's talking about Mahomes.
Oh,
lived here my entire life. My parents live here, graduated from the university here, and my wife and I now work at the university. We do what I would call really meaningful work and have done so together for the last 3 years. We've also been married the same amount of time. My wife moved here to be with me a semester before I graduated from college. She's originally from the upper Midwest. A few weeks ago, I returned from a business trip. To my surprise, an announcement from my wife. She's pregnant. We've been trying for the last 4 months, and I couldn't be happier. Congrats to you guys. This past summer, we were approached with a job offer to do the same kind of work, but on a greater scale in what Anthony Bourdain called one of the 2 greatest cities in all of America. By the way, I read Kitchen Confidential. I'm over my time. I had never read it. It's good. Incredible. Good. Yeah. Incredible. He's a really great writer. He just a very theatrical way of describing stuff. And it's not shocking the book did so well and that he was so great as a television host. No longer with us. On the surface, this move is a no-brainer. We'd leave my family, but be very close to my wife's family. The position itself comes with a ton of upward mobility. On top of it all, I love the city. We went for an interview a couple weeks ago, and ever since I've gotten great feedback, whether from the people who interviewed us or from mutual connections. The job hasn't been offered to us, but there's still a couple more potential candidates, but all signs point to this being a real opportunity. Despite all the positives, there's still some obvious things for us to consider. We recognize this will be a huge move. Not only will we be learning to adjust to the work-life transition that a newborn represents, but it'd also be in a new environment that neither of us have ever been in before. We'd also be leaving behind a situation that for all intents and purposes we love. We love the work we've done. We love the people here. We've been really successful. Moving would mean that we were practically hitting the reset button on everything we've built up to this point. Whatever happens, we'll be perfectly content. But at this stage of my life, I feel like if there's any time to make a move, it is now, before we have kids, before we lay down solid roots, etc. I'm an ambitious guy, and I love the idea of doing impactful, meaningful work. But what is more important to me is that it's the best decision for my family, both in the short and long term. With me being a consistent, long-time listener, and by proxy, my wife, I figured I'd write to fellas and see what they think. Appreciate you guys taking the time to read this. Look, I mean, my approach to this is always pretty standard. You love where you're at. You've got this awesome, dynamic. You can always go back to it. It'll likely always be there for you. And even though you're about to start a family, the newborn part of it, you're not as worried about schools. Yes, you're not going to have the same amount of help. But if you'll allow me, without sharing it, on the email, I think I have an idea of what field you work in. I would imagine this field provides you a great sense of community. I'd imagine that your acceptance into what field you're in provides just a lot of support. So you might have more support despite feeling like you're a stranger in a new area than just, some of these other dudes emailing us in being like, hey, I'm in suburban Atlanta and I'm by myself playing video games. I'm 28 and no girls like me. So, look, I am really big good on this. I'm just so big because you like the area. I mean, the other times it's, hey, the career part is this, but I don't want to leave home, or I'd rather live here. It seems like you are up for the adventure. It seems like it also potentially raises what your ceiling is, which I think is always baked into this internal debate that you'll have with yourself when you're facing these kind of opportunities. And look, like, I mean, not to go too zen on you, but life is about these experiences. Life is about having these experiences, like put the rest of it kind of in a better perspective, and I always would tell my younger siblings whenever, they love Martha's Vineyard, they're kind of in tune with the whole deal with the place. But I was always very big on, like, you need to leave so that you'll come back and appreciate this more, or you'll know that you're not missing anything, or you'll leave and go, I'm really glad I don't live there, So I'm big on telling you to go for it because of the simple part of what the first line of the answer is that, the whole cliche of you can always go home. I think in this case, you can certainly always go home.
Yeah, I'm a guy that wants to go back. It's not as easy right now, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Like, I want to go back and still have things remain pretty good for me. I came out here as a guy with nothing to lose, and now I kind of got shit to lose. So, it's got to be like a structured retreat, so to speak. So I got shit to lose, Kyle, by the way. Thanks. But I totally agree with you. Like, if you never leave and you never know, it's like, that's gross. It seems like everyone's kind of on the same page, except for, like, this is good too. That also seems good. And it sounds like you can come back and maybe your wife can maybe be what would be her boss now or whatever. Like, it sounds like when he's saying the upward mobility, and like, that is good for your family. And I don't know, early children, I think, if you really don't like it, you have time to get back before you're not like pulling your kid out of high school or something. I think you have time to figure out whether this is the right move or not. And I don't know. I agree. I'd say move. It's cool that you have a place that you really love and that you see yourself going back to one day. So,
and it flies by. Like, just inside, I've been in LA now 7 years. That's 7 years. So basically, like, my 40s will, except for the first couple, like, will be primarily living in Los Angeles. And some days it feels like I just moved here. But the point is like, if you move, it's going to feel huge. It's going to feel, those first few months when you're driving around being like, oh, I really live here. Like, I actually
got a new
live here.
pizza
Like,
spot. Fuck yeah.
This is crazy. And then it just becomes normal. And then the years are just going to start flying by. And, for me, I could never imagine living anywhere else. Maybe I'll move again. I don't know. But I'm happy I did it. But I'm not trying to, like, compare the same thing. I guess I'm just talking strictly on a timeline thing. Like, I can't believe how fast this time has gone by since I moved from Connecticut. And my guess is if you're moving to a place that you like, it's going to go by so fast that, next thing you know, your kid's going to be 5. You might have another kid, and you're going to go, all right, maybe now we have to start making some of those other decisions. But I don't really see the downside to this experience.
Yeah. Could be interested to know if your parents are letting you know this breaks their heart every day, like one of my parents is doing to me.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. If everyone's just like, wait, you're taking my grandchild away before, whatever. And I don't even have that. It's just like, I get told I missed a lot, and it's like I'm doing something to this person by not being there, and that's just whatever. She loves me and whatever. But
Kyle, you know what you do? Just go, I don't want your life.
What is that from? Why do I know that?
Oh, it's the Beak, dude.
I just made it up.
Yeah, you wrote that. Yeah,
Ceruti.
I would echo Kyle's thing about the kids. Like, you can move kids when they're young. I don't
exactly.
Like,
kids love to move when they're young.
It's a game. It could be a game when they're young, right? I mean,
yeah. So you actually have way more time, I think, than you'd think to live there, figure out if you like it, and then if you don't, just move back. And, like, it's kind of no harm, no foul. I mean, I always, like, there's kind of in my head, there's like two sort of easy ways to move. One is, Kyle's example, when you just have nothing to lose, and it's like, might as well just see what this is about. And then if it doesn't work, you just kind of come back. And the other one, if it just financially makes sense and you're not going to have to worry about money, and, like, it's just going to be easy for you. And again, you could probably just move back if it doesn't work out anyway, because you're in a decent financial position. So sounds like both of those are maybe checked off the list. So I think you got to try it. And, as someone who I have lived in Connecticut most of my life, I did live in DC for a period of time. I love DC. I would have absolutely loved to live there, but it just didn't kind of work out career wise. And then I
always forget about DC, Ceruti.
Yeah, went to like 50 Nats games in one season when they were like $5 a ticket. I was sitting in the nosebleeds. There was a weekend series against the Marlins that I'll never forget where they were leading in the 9th inning of every single game and lost all of them. So
look at their attendance now. Ceruti was like, my work is done.
Yeah, we're back. I basically started being a Nats fan. So what's up? But yeah, so it just didn't work out for me career wise. I would have loved to have lived there. I mean, so I don't know. Like, I think I wouldn't worry about the kid thing initially, unless you're just afraid like you're going to have no help. But again, if this is a good financial situation for you guys, then that's obviously going to help you with the childcare stuff and long terms, and maybe just kind of, hey, you have to bite the bullet for now. But I'm kind of always pro figuring stuff out if you can, and then you could always come back. It's not the end of the world.
Would you consider moving back to DC now that the swamp is drained? I'm just kidding. That's just a joke.
Not if you had to fill out an email saying what he did this week.
Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, I gotta. Yeah. What do you do here?
Ceruti the lobbyist. Like, I don't know, dude.
I'll leave that alone.
That was perfect.
All right. Last one here. Sydney Sweeney is hurting my marriage. Hey, is that true that engagement got delayed?
So people are saying. Big news for people on Instagram.
Sad day indeed.
Okay. Wait, what did you say? You said what? That she's what did you say?
It's just that the engagement had been delayed. The thing that sucks for celebrities is that it could have been like a venue issue. Maybe there was a flood at the venue and they're like, oh, the engagement. And basically everybody's going like, this dude's expiration date,
right?
Right? Because he's older. That sucks. Us older guys, we resent that kind of stuff.
I can hear it in his voice. He's like, that sucks.
That's what I'm doing. I'm not even talking about him specifically. I'm just saying, like, you pissed at him because he has game.
I'm kind of embarrassed to know this, but I think it's that they had been engaged for 3 years, and then the wedding has now been pushed back. Is what I think I read. Which 3 years plus a pushback, that doesn't seem promising. But I don't know. Celebrities are weird. Maybe it's totally normal.
I'd be down. I'd be like, hey, can we push this back 6 months? No problem.
Speaking of marriage, did you see Lana Del Rey got married to some like regular dude?
Yeah, that was a while ago, dude.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, just hope for the guys out there. You never know. Shoot your shot.
I love the regular dude husbands.
I don't know what I'm trying to find what he does.
We should have one of those guys on.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Hit up Lana Del Rey's refs and be like, hey, can we have her?
We just ask him questions?
Not her. Yeah.
We just ask him.
No, we don't care about her.
There was a kid we went to high school with that we were like, did you hear he's dating the girl? I don't know if it was Gossip Girl or something, but he was dating like a legitimate star. And somebody was like, how did they meet? He's like, he was working at a shoe store.
Holy shit. He's an alligator tour guide?
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's fucking awesome. Maybe he isn't a regular dude.
Yeah, it sounds like an awesome dude.
Yeah.
No wonder. What's your licensing for that? Imagine you're just trying to follow in his footsteps. You move down to some place, become an alligator tour guide, and he's like, well, all right, when do the starlets show up? All right. So our guy's 5'7" 3/4. Love it. 165, 185 times 8 reps on the bench. I was indulging in some recreational marijuana watching the first season of White Lotus with my amazing wife. The beautiful Sydney Sweeney was turning heads poolside in a bikini. The tropical locale and stunning temptress overwhelmed my lizard brain, and I blurted out, I would take a bullet for you, Sydney.
Bro.
This led to a big fight with my wife, and needless to say, we're not finishing White Lotus season 1. Obviously, I'm a moron, but what do I do to remedy the situation?
Well, one,
is that true? Is this a true story? I don't know.
I can't imagine anybody would let that out, but let's just
Kyle, do you
pretend
talk
it is.
about when you're watching movies and TV, do you talk about how hot somebody is in front of your wife? Because like I do, and my wife
Dude,
does
she
too, and
will
I don't
do it.
really
She
care.
will do it. I've done it maybe twice, and like years have passed in between. She will do it, talk about how pretty a girl is, whatever. And I think I said it once pretty tamed, just being like, it's just and then there's just conventionally beautiful woman, and it doesn't make sense with or something. And then I could see it's like, oh, still can't do this. So I'm never itching to bring it out. But if she'll say something nice about a woman on TV, how beautiful, whatever, maybe I've done it like I could really count like 2 times, and each time it was like, yep, still isn't something I'm going to do. So simple as that.
See, it's kind of the opposite because I feel like me and my wife, we like know who each other's people are.
I know those people are out there. I was like, maybe
she'll be like,
I'm
oh,
married
that's
to
your
one of those
girl.
people. I'm not.
But she'll be like, oh, that's your girl. I'm like, you're right. It is my girl. But I don't know that I would blur it out while watching White Lotus, something that absurd. So that's why I'm like, is this actually real? I don't know. If you did, that's like, I wouldn't do that. That is kind of rude.
Right, like beat me with a baseball bat.
Yeah, like I would drink your bathwater. It's like, what's going on right now? Like, a little too far.
A little salt burn for you. Yeah, I mean, that's really specific, man. I mean, you didn't just say, oh, wow, she's something else. You went overboard with it. I don't know why you said it that way either. So I can understand that she's going to be upset, but she's your wife. So there's probably something you liked about her. So she probably, you're going to laugh about this at some point. I just don't know why. Kyle, you're still 2 years out, not laughing. You do see like the dynamic that some people are going to listen to this and go, she can compliment other women. You can't compliment other women. Like, is she sitting there watching Chris Pine and being like, you can smash me in the head with a baseball bat?
Nope, never a dude. It's never a dude in our house. It's always been she.
All right. So that might be
okay.
That might be the problem.
So you can compliment dudes how I understand this.
I could. Yeah. I usually say it for life
every
advice.
time Idris comes up, you should be like, that fucking
damn.
guy.
I usually save it for life advice. Yeah.
Save some for the rest of us, buddy.
You should have been James Bond. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
New James Bond.
That'll
We
do
might be
it.
getting one, right? Now that there's I guess we've been here for a while, but now that they turned over the rights to choose the next James Bond strictly to Amazon, we might get one pretty soon.
Some people are saying it's going to be Carissa Thompson.
People are saying that?
That's what I heard.
Wow.
All right. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Wargon. Thanks to Ceruti. The Ryen Russillo podcast on video form as well. Please subscribe. Ringer Spotify.